The Russia cloud hanging over the White House getting darker and more threatening with the indictments of 2 former campaign aides and the guilty plea from a third. And now there are rumblings from some Republicans who say President Trump should issue pardons for anyone involved with the Russians. My next guest says the president could do that, but he shouldn't. Joining me now is John Yoo, who was a U.S. Deputy Assistant Attorney General during the George W. Bush administration. Good to have you on, Mr. Yoo. Thank you so much. I want to get to all of that, but first I want to ask you about this. I want to get your take on the president bashing our justice system, saying that we have to get tougher and we're afraid of doing anything politically incorrect. You drafted the memo which authorized enhanced interrogation techniques like waterboarding when you worked in the Bush administration. Do you agree with the president calling our justice system a laughingstock?
No, I don't. And I think the thing to keep in mind is that civilian courts are good for some things and military courts are good for other things. The most important reason to have military commissions is when there's classified information at stake. So far, from everything I've seen about the Saipov case and this Manhattan bombing, it doesn't look like there's any classified information or intelligence sources and methods that would have to be kept secret in order to prosecute him. So it seems to me that a civilian court could do a fine job here.
Were you surprised to hear the president say he considers sending this man to Guantanamo Bay? Do you think he understands the implications of that?
Well, I think it would be a mistake. I think, at least in the time I was in the Bush administration, we were pretty careful to make sure all citizens and permanent resident aliens who are caught for terrorism within the United States, within our borders, were handled by the civilian justice system. Placing them in Guantanamo is really an issue for the answer for the most dangerous terrorist leaders who are captured abroad, and it's because we don't have really anywhere else secure to keep them. I don't think that's the case with this Saipov guy.
So should we keep Guantanamo open?
I think we have to, because we do have the core of the original al-Qaeda leadership. And just, if you remember, just the security costs to try them in Manhattan and New York City would be millions of dollars a year. Plus, Guantanamo Bay is a safe and secure facility which we can prevent al-Qaeda attacks trying to demonstrate or even try to free people like that. But I don't think that's what's the issue with the Saipov case. As far as we can tell from the reports we've gotten in the first day after attack, he seems like a relatively low-level, lone wolf person inspired by ISIS or al-Qaeda propaganda, but he doesn't seem to be part of any kind of greater covert network.
Yeah. Mr. Yoo, I want to turn now to the Russia investigation and Mueller. You argue that even if people don't like it, presidential pardons for anyone who falls under Mueller's charges are legal, saying this. You say, even if Mr. Trump has the constitutional power to pardon Mr. Manafort and his allies, conservatives should vigorously oppose such pardons on the ground that they would do serious damage to the presidency. In the popular mind, pardons imply the commission of a crime. Indeed, a pardon here would grasp defeat from the jaws of victory because the charges against Mr. Manafort show no connection at all between Russia and the 2016 campaign. Why do you think Trump using his power to pardon would be such a bad move?
Don, first I got to say, it sounds much better when you read it than when I wrote it. Look, sounded great. But seriously for a second, I think the president has an almost unreviewable power to pardon. The Constitution only contains 2 exceptions to pardon for cases of impeachment and state crimes. Those aren't subject to the pardon power. Other than that, the Constitution contains no limits. But just because President Trump can do it constitutionally doesn't mean it's a good idea. Here, I think it would be a disaster, actually, for our political system and the presidency for President Trump to take the advice of some and issue blanket pardons because they don't like the way that Mr. Mueller is carrying out the special investigation. If people have gripes with the decisions Mr. Mueller is making, the answer is not to set everybody free or to preemptively forgive everyone who's committed a crime, like allegedly Mr. Manafort and his associates, who seem to be guilty of really money laundering and tax evasion. The answer is to remove Mr. Mueller. If President Trump really thinks Mueller has gone beyond his mandate or is acting unethically or is biased, the answer is to fire Mueller. But the answer is not to start issuing pardons to everyone connected to any alleged conspiracy.
But how would you know? How would you know at this point then? Because it's early on. How would you even know? And I mean, you're saying it has to do with crimes that deal with money and so on. But he's not finished with the investigation yet.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. I quite agree with you, Don. The pardon power is really only for two cases. One is when the law seems harsh. That doesn't seem to be present here with Mr. Mayor. It doesn't seem like the law here calls for excessive penalties for money laundering and tax evasion. And then the second case the framers had in mind, the one that's even more important in the Federalist Papers, is the idea that you might have a rebellion or a riot, and you need to pardon people in order to restore peace. Like the end of the Civil War and Reconstruction, when President Lincoln and President Johnson issued blanket pardons. That's not even close.
But you don't think there would be a riot
here.
now, considering how divided the country is, if he actually pardoned all those people, or if he got rid of Mueller?
Oh, no. My point is just that you would only issue a pardon
Then,
if there had been some kind of disorder, and you need to, pardon people to restore order, to end a conspiracy.
Right.
Here, there's nothing like that going on.
John Yoo, thank you.
Thanks, Don.
And when we come back.